Very good morning to all of our Dhamma friends. I'm happy to see you all this morning, but I think many of you face it difficult to reach Dharamshala, and I was told many of them reach here about 1 p.m. this morning. You might be very tired. We shall keep this session little shorter, and so that you can rest in the afternoon. I welcome all of you to Dharamshala with great intentions, and this 1 week discussion or collective learning process might be meaningful and also useful to all sentient beings in this universe. And I am happy to know also that many of you are, for the second and third time, or more than that, continuously participating in the past seminars. So that means you feel some positive result of our collective learning. So with these words, I again welcome you to Dharamshala and apologize for inconveniences which you have to face to reaching here, and hopefully coming 5 days you may not have any inconveniences and able to restore your energy in a positive way, and also to have awakening of inner intelligence through collective learning process, and that will be beneficial to all sentient beings. So before we begin the seminar, usually we keep 5 minutes silent. The 5 minutes silent means to settle down the chattering of our thoughts in our mind. So during the 5 minutes silent, what you're supposed to do is to ignore all the chattering of thought without any reaction to those thoughts. Let the thought come, let the thought go, but you doesn't have any response to those thoughts, and thereby you may able to achieve a free mind of preconditioning. So in this process, we will have 5 minutes silent. You keep the time? Okay. Om. Thank you. Before touching the topic of discussion, I need to clarify a few things. which appears to be necessary. In the information letter, Sophia mentioned that I will work as a spiritual guide. I am not here to guide you in spirituality. I have no capacity to do that. Although I have learned the Buddhist canon quite extensively, but not a practitioner in real sense. The knowing through listening, wisdom, is a borrowed knowledge, so which cannot work as a guidance to others. There's one thing, I'm here only to facilitate the seminar as a facilitator. As any one of you, nothing special, nothing different that you need to be keeping in mind. And the second limitation for me is the language capacity. We are using English as our medium of communication, and my skill of English is very poor. At many times I speak wrong English, broken English, and also sometimes I need vocabulary, and I do not know many technical terms. So therefore you have to bear with me by understanding that the language limitation. So these are the then the third thing is my age is also not favorable. I am losing the short memory. Sometimes I forgot the names or the time or the numbers. So there's a chance to be making wrong information. So you have to be alert about that as well. With these three limitations, you should keep in mind. And finally, the seminar does not mean a kind of teaching or instruction or training or guidance. The seminar is a process of collective learning journey. We shall have to inquire into the subjects through our collective wisdom or intelligence, whatever we might have. So keep in mind that joint inquiry into a specific subject, as mentioned in this program, day by day. So for that, to make an effective inquiry, we must have a free mind, unbiased and unconditioned mind, ready to examine, analyze, critique, and try to find the reality as far as possible, individually as well as sharing with others collectively. Human beings are social living being. Therefore, all our activities need to be collaboration and cooperation, not only individually. So therefore, keeping in mind all our participants, respecting their viewpoint, and yet ready to analyze them through logic and reasoning and find the reality. So this is the procedure or the discipline through which we are going to the coming 5 days to make an effective inquiry for the benefit of all sentient beings, and particularly the living beings on this planet Earth. So this is first information to make you aware of the limitations and challenges and the way how we proceed through a collective inquiry. As I mentioned before, I am not giving any guidance or instructions or teaching, but I am presenting a viewpoint which are the concept of Buddhist tradition basically, and that also includes the rest of the ancient Indian thoughts and wisdom. Apart from the Buddhist, there are many other philosophical and religious traditions of India, pre-Buddha and post-Buddha. So they are almost in one direction, which gives a viewpoint of the great India. We may call it the Indian wisdom, Indian thought, which has a lot of similarity and sometimes also very unsimilarity. Both of these similarity and unsimilarity has something to present to the learner, some viewpoint, some new thing that we need to be alert. And secondly, to make a learning process, we have to be very sharp critic mind, not to be accepted what is presented by the facilitator. Facilitator is presenting a viewpoint, as I mentioned before, basically Buddhist viewpoint, but also which inclusive of the other ancient Indian traditions. And you have to examine them without rejecting immediately, without accepting immediately. Try to know the things as they are, without any distortion or without any preposition from one side. Actually, our mind is deeply conditioned by a number of different acceptance. That today, the system of whole education is a kind of indoctrination. Try to make the students to accept whatever is taught. and not encourage them to know it. Knowing and acceptance is a quite different thing. If we examine our own knowledge, you may find the major part of your knowledge is just accepting what is taught by the teachers or what is written in the books or scriptures. So without any examination, you accepted them, taking for granted. That means you are not knowing it, but you are accepting it. Knowing and acceptance has a huge difference. Even faith, many in spiritual traditions encourage a kind of faith. Faith should also a faith through understanding, through knowing. Not the faith just accepting whatever is taught by the teacher or what is written in the literature. Accepting that doesn't make a real faith. Real faith needs knowing, understanding, realization, and then having a faith that is real faith. Otherwise, it might be chance of becoming blind faith. Blind faith has no value. It's not a real faith. So therefore, the analytical mind is, discriminating mind is absolutely necessary to know anything. So that may be kept in our mind. At least in our 5 days, we will try to be unbiased and unconditioned mind. Sometimes I used to call it original mind. The human inner intelligence without contaminated by any external factor, that is original mind. That original mind has capacity to discriminate things and go to the things at the real level. And another basic thing which shall have to keep in mind is whatever appear to our mind and thought and what in reality is. Usually there is a huge difference, the appearance and the reality. So we should not just satisfied by knowing the apparent to our mind, apparent to our thought, or to apparent to our examination. The apparent may not be the same what is the reality. And the reality is also at 2 levels. The Buddhist terminology says the absolute truth and the relative truth. The absolute truth is indivisible. That has the absolute truth, and there's nothing to further examination or inquiry. The relative truth is a reality in our life, in our behavior. In that also, one thing might be relative truth, the other things may appear as relative truth, yet it may be in the realm of untruth or unreality. It appears to be something else, and it do exist in reality something else. That difference we shall have to keep in mind while examining the things, the presentation which I put before you, so that you kindly keep in mind. The basic structure or the overall subject is better we, better world. Through this organization, the seminars are being conducted. And that means that each human individual does have the capacity to transform or to change. The transformation or to change must begin from oneself. Without transforming oneself, that person cannot transform any other person. Because then it is just a word. Nothing have essence, because the change is not being realized, internalized and experienced by the person who is trying to change the others. So therefore we call it better we. The first we have to change oneself, and then that self has a universal responsibility to make every effort continuously, unceasingly, to change the others, to change the world as a whole. And in this process, for this particular seminar is be the love you want to see in the world. That is just a kind of extension what Gandhi have said. What do you want to see change in the society? You have to be the change yourself. India has produced many great people, great teachers, and in recent time, in the 19th or 20th century, the whole world has a very outstanding teacher, which called the Mahatma, the Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. And at many times I wonder how he was able to realize such truth and reality without having any kind of organized or structured spiritual learning or religious learning. He was only a modern, educated, and a very stable lawyer, but his own capacity or inner intelligence was able to understand the entirety of the ancient Indian spiritual thought process. And then he also know how this can be practiced and actualized through political and social movements. So that is really, I very much appreciate the Einstein's remark that people will not believe such a person was moving in flesh and bones on this earth. That's true. Such people appeared. But unfortunately, now people forgotten the Gandhi's thoughts, and there's not much effort to understand the Gandhi's teaching, which is the most relevant in this 21st century, in the academic field, in the political and the social field. people do remember the Gandhi's name and also do to erect Gandhi's statues everywhere. Apart from that, what was the real teaching of Gandhi? Very few people were able to give attention. I think the present global situation, the challenges facing to us, imposed to us, such like climate change, global warming, environmental degradation, violence, wars, disturbances. If there's any remedy to these challenges, the only thing is teaching of non-violence. Teaching of non-violence was not a new thing, the ancient Indian tradition, particularly Mahavira and Shakyamuni. These two great teachers have very much emphasized the teaching of non-violence. But both these teachers' teaching of non-violence is limited only in the sphere of spiritual journey. And Gandhi was for the first time how this essence of spiritual journey, non-violence, can be practiced in the process of social change and political change. So therefore, I think everyone should try to at least understand what Gandhi have thought and what Gandhi have taught to us. It's not necessary we should agree entirely the Gandhian principles. Even we reject Gandhi, we should know what he was talking about. Without knowing acceptance and without knowing rejection, both have no meaning. So I always appeal to the younger generation to read and to know the Gandhi. And if we read the Gandhi and the subjects we are dealing in this seminar, we also be very much become clear through the Gandhian literature. So that is something side business. I don't know what is the time schedule.
11:30. 11:30.
Oh, 11:30, okay. Now I am coming to the 5 topics which are given in this time schedule. Monday says being. We shall try to discuss little bit about what is being ourselves. We have a perpetuate condition of mentally labeling a self or I, a being. Apparent as such a person or such a I exists by its own nature, independently, without relating to or without depending to anything. That is absolutely false notion. Without examining this false notion, we will not be able to understand what is I, who I am, what kind of I exist. Yeah. When you take birth, you doesn't have any name. some weeks later or some months later, the parents or relatives will put a name, and that name become identical to the self. And someone calls by that mean, the reaction is the person is calling me. There is a independent self-existence of me is very much there. So our response, our mental grasping is a solid me which is there. And that solid me, if we analyze where this exists, then it will not be able to find. So therefore, the interdependently arising thing which thought or mind designates as me in relative truth, that is difficult to recognize. So a person, how we identify a person, the majority of Indian tradition, including Buddhist, they consider the person is beginningless and also endless. It has no beginning and it has no end. It remains continuing. And in that continuation, only the subtle consciousness which comes from the past life and enter into this life's body and remain in this body throughout the life, and when death comes, the present body and the present consciousness depart separately, and that subtle consciousness goes in the next birth and take a new body and goes on like that. So therefore, a person has a composite of 5 aggregates which makes an individual. Among the 5 aggregates, the first aggregate is rupa, in Sanskrit called, that means the form, the flesh body, that is one thing. And the second aggregate is vedana, that means the feeling, the sensation, the feeling. And the third is sanjana, the recognition or the perception. And the fourth is sanskar, that means composite fetters, compositional fetters, parts, or some kind of action. And the fifth is consciousness, the vijnana. And these 5 comes together, makes a basis of a person or an individual. And among them, the form is only matter. The other 4 is only matter. The other 4 is the mind, the feeling, the perception, the compositional fetters, and the consciousness. All this belong to mind. Any person or individual is composite of three essential things, that is body, mind, and speech. Speech here means just the expression. There may be some dumb person who is not able to speak any language, yet there is a sound, there is an indication. So the body, the mind, and the sound composition, and this three composition needs the five aggregates. In Sanskrit we call it sekanda, and in English I don't know why the translators use the aggregates, and some translated from Tibetan language they say hip, just things together. Whatever it may be, the form, the feeling, the recognition, the action or composited nature parts, and the consciousness, these five together make a basis to designate a personality or person. And among the five, only the consciousness is coming from previous life, beginninglessly, and it goes to the next life by accepting the continuity of life. Among the Indian traditions, there was only one tradition, only one philosophical school, Charvak. They do not believe a previous life or future life, continued life. They consider the consciousness is a quality of the other four skandhas, other four aggregates: the form, the feeling, the recognition, and the action. These four creates the consciousness, the mind. The mind can be curated by composition of these four other elements, or particularly the form. When we conceive, only the form is there, and that has a natural force to originate a consciousness. And when the body is disintegrated, the consciousness also goes away. So this is only, now this Charvak tradition is no more exist. We are not able to find any Charvak scholar in India these days. Only the literature does exist. I don't know whether this position, this concept is similar with the modern scientific view. I heard that modern scientific view also do not accept continuity of consciousness from previous life or from post-life. But their argument or their evidences, I have no idea. But in the Indian tradition, there's a lot of argument. No material can create a mind. A mind has its own origination, its own similar cost and conditions. Therefore, the form and the other things can be arising through external causes in this life, but the continuity of consciousness must come from the past life. So that subtle argument has not gone through a scientific experiment. And sometimes we argue with the modern science people that they should have some way to experiment in the newborn person. How does the consciousness creates? If that is real scientifically examined, then I think evidences can be seen, can be understood, whether consciousness is can rise abruptly or it has a similar foregoing cause that need to be examined. So I'm not going to that. I'm only say these 5 aggregates come together on which we designate as a person, later on it give a name. So therefore a person exists on the basis of the composition of 5 aggregates along with a metal projection or metal labeling, Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, with the name that makes a person. And that person does not exist by its own, without depending, without relating to any other factor. If does it exist by its own nature, then through analytical search, it shall have to be able to pinpoint and find out. I consider someone calls by my name, I consider I exist independent of everything. But that when I search in my aggregates, my body is not me, because we call it my. We believe it my. I am the owner, and the body is my property, or I own this. My speech, my mind, my feeling, my recognition, my action, all these are mine. When we talk about it, when think about it, you always put mine somewhere else. Now after analyzing all these 5 aggregates separately, where is my, where is the me, where is the I, which is separate from all these aggregates? Can you pinpoint it? That is not able to pinpoint it. Then in that case, there's no me. Then it would be entirely nihilism. You cannot deny a person who enjoy happiness, who suffer from unhappiness, who does lot of work. All this, a me is need to be, cannot be denied. But you are not able to find out this is me on the analytical search. On that search, you will find everything which supposed to be me become my. And that is not false also. You can't say it is false that my body is not correct. You should say body is me. that is logically or rationally cannot be established. Because body can be subject to many things which are not subject to the me. And similarly all these other aggregates as well. So therefore, it appears to be there is a sense of independent, solid and arising by its own nature. Me is there, but on analytical search you will not able to find it. Then what is relative truth? The relative truth is on the combination of 5 aggregates and name and thought designate on that an individual and personality, a person is designated, and by that designation you exist as yourself. And that is relative truth because in relation the others, me is exist. In relation to the mind and thought, the me is exist, but it is not able to pinpoint when you search it. So therefore, in the absolute truth, there's no existence of independent and by its own nature, existence of me is negated. The negation of such existence is the absolute truth on the individual, on the person, on the being, but exists functional and workable interdependently, interrelatedly, it exists there. And this principle can be applied to everything. Many things which are only exist in comparison and in relation. But in our thought, the big exists by its own, the small exists by its own, the beautiful exists by its own, the ugly exists by its own. But the big, the usual thought can be designated to any size. Any size comparing with the smaller than that, it becomes big. But it compares with the bigger than that, it may become small. And big, small, east, west. You sit this side, east may be somewhere else, and you change your position, then all the directions are going to change. So therefore, all these things are by mental projection, mental designation, in relation or in comparison something that do exist. So therefore, the no existence of the anything by its own truth or by its own nature, without depending, without comparing, without relating to anything, the things does not exist. So similarly, the being, a person, an individual, is also just projection of name and thought which make that entity workable and functional. So by understanding the non-existence of being by its own nature or by its own causes, without depending, without relating, without comparing to anything, then it can be evolved, it can be decay. All these things can be happening by its own. But since the being do not exist, it only exists in a relative truth, in relation, in comparison, by thought, by name, and by behavior. You have to identify that. Then that means you will able to understand self or me or I, whatever you use any word, that is entirely, for everything, entirely depend on the rest of things. Not only immediate contacts, it entirely depends on universally, pervasively. So this need to be make clarity in one's mind. Therefore, we will be able to understand the next topic, the interbeing. So to understand the interbeing, you have to understand the being which exists only in relation, not independently by its own entity. So that's how the Buddhists look to the beings. And in spite of that, even the continuity of consciousness, the subtle consciousness, which coming from the past life, which goes unendingly until the Buddhahood. Buddhahood also have no end. The consciousness enlightened as Buddha, then there will also be remain continue. This continuity is also not independent self-existence. The continuity is also designated on many interdependently arising nature. So whatever exists, that exists in the realm of interdependent arising. So that is the basis of basic conception of the Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist darshan, I should say, Buddha darshan. Partit samutpan siddhant. Partitya sam utpan. So, relating to each other, meeting with each other, causing with each other, and all this phenomenon of the world are grossly and roughly constructed on relationship, on a dependent nature, in comparison, or in a form of cause and effect. The relationship can be many different things. Some kind of relationship in the realm of comparison, some kind of relationship in the realm of cause and effect, some kind of relation in the realm of process of knowing. So there are many different realms of interrelatedness, interdependentness. Interdependentness does not mean only in the realm of cause and effect. Of course, cause and effect is one of the major interdependency. The effect always depend on the cause, and cause is also depend on the effect. And apart from that, the many other things which are constructed relationship or mental projected relationship, or in reality through the process of learning, process of understanding, the relationships will become more and more clarity. So therefore, everybody should try to analyze what is I. How does it exist by its own nature, or it is exist in relation to something, or independent to something. So we have to make intensive inquiry to find out. Whenever somebody called by my name, my mental reaction is, yes, I am here. Very solid, and which can be pointed out. But that I am here, the I is what, where, how. The body, the mind, the speech, the aggregates, the part of a whole body. When you examine this, as I mentioned before, immediately all of these have become mine. You separate yourself from the... So some of the Indian traditions says the consciousness is the I. It does exist separately. It does not depend on anything. So that is the subtle separate is called Atma, or the soul, which does exist completely independent of everything. That has also their own way of arguing. And in that case also, the Buddhist argument is that if that is such an independent consciousness, without depending on thought, and name, then this will not be a correct statement. My consciousness, my Atma. If Atma is me, then you cannot say my Atma. But usually, in the common behavior, my inner core consciousness was shaking. Something I am afraid of from my Atma, my soul. So this kind of statement will not be true, because then the soul, so-called soul, which may be identified as the consciousness, there's no any other the body cannot be soul, the speech cannot be soul, only the consciousness can be soul or the Atma, then the Atma can never be considered as of my Atma, my soul. So there are certain traditions which says the Atma or the soul or the me is separate from all the aggregates and which exists there and which is beyond rationality. You cannot analyze them. It is beyond analyzation. So that is also not very accurate answer. How we can decide something we are not able to analyze by ourselves? Can we say it exists there beyond our analyzation? So what is the reason, the existence? It is only again a matter projection. If it exists there, then why it should be beyond analyzation? So these are many questions related to. So in the 6 different traditions of Indian thought, the concept of soul is all similar. Only the Buddhism says the Niratma, the no existence of Atma. All the other 5 traditions do believe the existence of independent soul, independent Atma, that is beyond human rationality or beyond our comprehension or something like that. So that is also different kind of idea. So we need to analyze all these things in order to understand self. How does self exist? What is the self? What is the me? What is the I? That would be a subject of inquiry we will do today. So I think now it is 11:30. We shall break for 30 minutes. And the next session will be interaction, dialogue. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for very meaningful comments and also answer to some of the questions. I remember one of the comments by Acharya Vinoba Bhavi, who is the spiritual heir of Mahatma. And he used to say quite often that if the modern scientific knowledge growth or development goes without any disturbance, they will reach to the stage of spirituality, and there will be a time to meet this sumit between science, modern science, and spirituality. Then entire world order would be something different. It was 70s and early 80s, his last stage of life. I used to oppose his statement. The modern scientific development cannot reach to spirituality because the modern scientific way of inquiring is depend on the ordinary mind. There are no method to improve the mind. They only improve the instruments and way of experiment, but the experimenter who are doing the experiment carries only the biological mind, whatever he or she get. Unless this mind enlarges, the scientific understanding cannot grow at the level of spirituality. But soon after, I used to argue this thing with David Bohm as well. He used to dialogue with Jiddu Krishnamurti, and I used to be part of that. And a long time in the Chennai, near the sea beach, we used to talk for hours together. So at that time, it appeared to me that modern scientific inquirers also have some kind of awareness that need of enlarging or improving the human mind, although they may not have the methods. Then His Holiness have a dialogue with science people, modern science people, for the last more than 40 years. And many scientific people, particularly the physicists, the neurologists and psychologists, and later on the other disciplines were also joined to this interaction. Now for the last many years it was institutionalized as the Institute of Mind and Life. Every year they used to have conferences between the Buddhist science and modern science. So I sometimes think that Vinoba Bhai was right. There might be some time may come to have a better dialogue and understanding between spirituality and scientific modern knowledge. Now, the modern science, particularly the physicists, find that mind is more important than the matter. But that is only a thesis which is not very elaborately explained or detailed. In the Buddhist philosophical tradition, there are 4 different schools: the Vibhashikas and the Sotrantikas, the Chittamatrata and the Mandamika. And Vibhashika and Sotrantrata, they are, traditionally we call it taking part of matter. And the Chittamatrata, the Vigyanbad, they are taking part of the mind. Mind does exist in reality, and matters are just arising from the mind. And now the science people are talking not the Madhyamik way of looking at things, but they are looking at things according to the Chittamatrata Vigyanbad. And that also, I think, a big achievement. It appears to be that they may continue to the inquiry. They might reach to the position of Madhyamika. The Madhyamika think that mind and matter exist interrelatedly, interdependently, and we cannot say mind is more powerful or the matter is more powerful. They are all exist only interdependently. No one side exists by its own independent existence. So the Partitya Samutpan explanation is very subtle and interrelatedness is easy to explain, but interdependently arising, whatever is arising, it comes from the interdependent. So now the modern physicists reach to the mind side. I think they can go forward to the Madhyamik position as well in future. That is our hope. Now the very important and relevant question is how these philosophical thoughts and spiritual things can be applied to the public sphere in the politics and the decision-making process. At this moment, it appeared to be something very impossible, because the world is going through very strange situation. This strange situation was arising during just last 2.5 centuries, or at most 3 centuries, due to a sudden growth of modern science and technology that give humanity to produce the things more than the need. And by that way, the production, which is much more than the need of the humanity, has to be consumed in the market. And thereby, they intentionally and systematically transformed the humanity from user to consumer, from the upayog to upabhog. So thereby, they need to exploit by all means the human greed. And the human greed is being exploited extraordinarily beyond any limitation. So now the present situation is that the entire world is converted into capitalism in their economic policies. Until few decades before, the China and Russia considered to be a socialist and not a capitalist. But overnight, all these countries are also changed to the capitalism. A capitalism more drastic, state capitalism, so to speak. So the production, the consumption, the market shall have to be maintained by all means. I remember one of scholars have written a book. I think it was sometime in the 1990s, 1995 or 1994, something like that. David Cotton or Cotton, something like that. when corporations rule the world. And he kindly gave me a copy also. I was not able to read as yet. But I know the contents of his idea. And then later on, he also wrote the post-corporate world. I don't know whether we reach into the post-corporate world or not. That is a different question. But the fact is, entire world today, each big or small, from the America and Russia or China to the small countries like Bhutan and Maldives and all this, entire world, the executive, the government, the legislature, the judiciary, all are under the control of few corporates, not a single exception. And the corporates look for profit only, not well-being of anyone. I don't think even they think about their own well-being. If there's a big profit, they may be ready to sacrifice their own well-being. And among them, most frightening thing is the weapon industry. Weapon industry need violence or possibility of war or possibility of war, threatening of war. In my life, I remember the Vietnam War was dragged on for 19 years. If the war was to win, they can win within 24 hours, like they win in Japan. If they wish to withdraw, they can do it within no time. But winning or stopping war was not the object, just to continue the consumption of weapons, different kind of weapons, on the cost of human well-being and human life. So this is our real situation. So all the so-called democratically elected people cannot make any policy or decision. The policy or decisions are being dictated by few industry houses. So therefore, how to translate the spiritual component into the public policy, that question is very difficult. The change of heart of the policymakers is the only way. But the change of hearts of the policymakers at this moment appears to be very difficult, if not impossible, because their greed and their selfishness has been immensely exploited by the so-called mainstream system. When something is become a mainstream, for example, the educational policies, in the educational policies, human beings are considered as a resource, which are need to be processed through school and college industry, and they produce the human resource suitable to the industry owners. Whatever they need, they shall have to be produced through the educational institutions. So in the ancient time, we used to have, India central government used to have education ministry, and during Rajiv's time, it was changed as a human resource development. So human beings are being considered as a resource, and the human beings themselves has accepted we are resource, we are need to be employed we cannot be independently taking a livelihood. So by this way, the entirely systematically the ruled population and the ruler and the dictators to the ruler, all the three are being completely indoctrinated into the capitalist economic system, and therefore it will take much long time. Some of my friends says, no, it will not take a long time because the natural disaster itself will compel them to change. That means it a big cost on the entire living beings on this earth. Great destruction that can only make the change of the hearts of them. Then it was questioned that what was my experience as working 10 years to head an organization, the Central Tibet Administration. It was a funny story how I was involved in this way. And then I was elected as the chief executive of the Central Tibet Administration. Some of my friends suggested me that you should derobe yourself, give up the monkhood and become a lay person so that you can work with your administration more efficiently. A monk may not be able to cope with the work. Then I said to my friend that let me experiment for 3 months. And during 3 months I will understand the work of the administration, and then I will decide whether I should give up the monkhood or the post. One of them I will give up. Then I experimented for 3 months. We are stateless. We have no defense organization. We have no law and order forces. So therefore, our work is only to look after the refugees, their welfare, and their education, and the monastic institutions to look after. So then I told them that this administration doesn't have any problem to do by a monk. So I will not give up any of this. I'll continue as a monk and also as a chief executive. So anyhow, I passed through 10 years. But I have a funny experience which I might share you. The system and law of the country sometimes compels you to do something wrong. That's very funny. I have a chartered accountant to look after all the registered bodies under the Indian law. So there need to be a lot of things are accomplished. Then my chartered accountant, I instructed that you should not do anything untruthfully. Whatever you make statements, there should be in reality and on the basis of truth. And no compromise from the truth, even you have to suffer something. Then he says, no, it is not possible. We have to adjust something to fulfill the legal requirements. And these are, it may be illegal, but it's not immoral. So we have to do something. Otherwise, we will not be able to get certified from the government side. Then I said, the government do not accept it. We should accept that, but we will not indulge into any kind of covering something untruthful statement. So he said, let me see. Then after a few months he says, I will not work for you. If I work according to your instruction, my company would be carry some bad name. If I do this, and the government will point out many things, and therefore you should search someone else. So that is why the system and the law sometimes compelled you to make some adjustments and something wrongful statements. And similarly, we have many projects, settlement development projects, and education projects, many things. Then I put 4 criteria to examine those projects. The 4 criteria, first is non-violence, and second is eco-friendly, and third is sustainable, and fourth is reaching the benefit to the poorest of the poor. If these 4 categories are fulfilled, then we accept the project. And any of these criteria is not fulfilled, we will not accept the project. Eco-friendly and non-violence is found to be very difficult for many developmental work. If it may not be directly violence, but indirectly it involves some kind of violence in the end. And also any kind of construction or these things, in spite of all the care, some damage to the ecosystem is unavoidable. So we find great difficulty with these problems. But anyhow, I was able to survive for 10 years. And that was my story. So what I am saying is that my work is an SL community work which does not involve into national economy or defense or law and order. So therefore, I need not go into the unpleasant things. In spite of that, only for social educational work also, at many times you are put in great challenge. So spirituality to put into the public policy or system, that appears to be very difficult, but in spite of that, we shall have to hope, because otherwise the humanity cannot survive for a long time. In order to save the all life system on this small planet Earth, we have to try our level best individually, collectively, jointly, whatever we may able to do. So we have to think about that. I think this is for the first comment. I respond this much thing. And the second question was very important. When someone unjustifiably hurt you or try to arouse your anger, how to deal with that? In that case, the Buddhist way of thinking and Gandhi's way of thinking are very similar. They are same. We have to keep compassionate mind to the injustice doer, but we have to oppose non-violently the injustice act. We shall have to differentiate the act and the actor. If you have some anger, the anger should be on the action, on the violence action, not to the actor. Aryadev, in his Chaturashtak, quote Buddha, Tube Nyumu Darsi Nyumu Tanti Kansami. The Buddha have saw the negative emotions as enemy, but not the emotion holders or emotional people are to be enemy. They are to be friend. So we shall have to oppose the negative emotions, and actions come out of negative emotions. So therefore, if we do not oppose to the negative action, accept them, just keep quiet them, then you will also become a part of that negative action. So you will have some negative effect because you know it is injustice and negative one, akushal, yet you are not expressly opposing them, means acceptance, and that you also become part of that. If you have hate and anger to the doer, then you are hating to some human individual. So human individuals are subject of compassion and love, not subject of anger and hate. In such situation, you shall have to calmly and subtly analyze why the other people is doing such thing. And are you not directly or indirectly causing that action? Someone is doing some negative thing to you, there must be some reason. He or she might dislike you. What was the cause? In this matter, you should read the Buddhacharya Avatar, the treatise written by Shanti Deva, a later scholar of Nalanda, and he argues with some person about the anger. So he asks, why you are so angry to that person? The person says, he hit me in my head and I am injured, the blood has come out. I feel great pain. Why should not I anger to that person? Oh, you are anger due to the heat? He says, yes. Then that was caused by the stick, not the person. Then he says, no, the stick didn't come voluntarily to my head. The person intentionally picked up the stick and he hit to me. Oh, the person is the band. That means then the person is also under the influence of anger. So you should anger to the person's anger, not the person. The hitting was not caused by the person alone. He was influenced by the anger in his mind. And that anger was arousing in him. You might have contributed something to arouse that anger. Then by that way, you should blame yourself and you should blame that anger, not that person. So by this way, these arguments are gone. So we have to differentiate the action and actor. Negative actions to be opposed non-violently, if possible. If not possible, you are not able to stop that action, but you should not arouse anger in your mind. Otherwise, you also become the same stage of the other person. I think the time is over. The other points we can discuss tomorrow, and we shall stop here. Thank you very much.